Welcome to this episode of Leaning into Discomfort with Middlebury Athletics. We are here celebrating Pride Month, and so I am very excited to be a part of this. My name is Elise Morris. I use she, they pronouns. I'm on the Middlebury women's soccer team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hig Roberts. I am a 2014 graduate. I was a member of the men's alpine ski team. Since then, I had a 5-year career with the national ski team. I use the pronouns he and him. It's great to return and talk to a current Middlebury student who, and a Middlebury athlete who is out and proud and talking about their identity, something that I was not able to do while I was a student. It feels very full circle.
I feel like that's like one of the more interesting things is how our stories are so different. Like me growing up in Seattle, I never really ended up, I've never come out to my parents. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on who that part of me was. And I think that's a pretty unique experience growing up in a liberal city with a lot of queerness. I coming to mid, and hearing some other people's stories or stories such as yours, I feel really lucky to have grown up in that space. I just kind of went to Pride one year and came back. I was like, that was the most amazing thing in the world. And then I went and downstairs and did laundry the next week and something. I found my dad had a Pride pin on his work shirt. And I was like, that was such a calm, easy, I was stressed about for sure, just not really knowing who I was. I was definitely still figuring things out. But to have that unequivocal support, even if it was not rooted in something certain, I still didn't know who I was, but I knew that maybe I was queer to whatever extent that is, felt really good. And I know that's different than how a lot of people have their coming out experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I love that story. I think for me, it's interesting. I mean, I come from a very loving, amazing family that has always accepted me for who I am. But I think these environments and the situations where people start to learn about themselves and come out, or you figure out their identity, has a lot to do with environmental factors that you just talked about, or the lack thereof. So for me, it was essentially a visibility thing. I grew up in a very small town in northern Colorado, 10,000 people. The town I'm from is named Ski Town, USA. So inherently, it's just a pretty macho culture place. It's conservative. I listened to country music growing up. I just didn't know of anyone who was quote unquote different or away from what I had perceived to be a normal sexual orientation. And growing up feeling different, knowing I was different from a young age, I felt like it was okay, and that I wasn't feeling threatened in my environment, but I just I didn't know where to start in order to present that to my family and my friends and my community. So basically just, unfortunately it forced me to, go more years than I wanted to, trying to figure out who I am and finding the safe and comfortable time to do so. And then ultimately undergoing a professional athletic career in a sport that is incredibly masculine and macho and strength-based, and also a sport where there's never been any openly gay male skiers. It forced me into further not being able to speak about my identity. And like I said, I think there was no visibility. There was no other people in the space that I could relate to. And that made it very scary, the idea of being the first one to do it. But ultimately, that's what I'm doing now. And that's why I'm having discussions with my great former school and people like you, is that I think, more people be able to be who they are at a younger age. That's the most important thing in life. And we're definitely moving in the right direction. I guess so on that note too, I think what I've come to realize, which I'm so happy and proud about, and these schools are starting to, and especially athletic programs are starting to, include a lot more diversity and inclusion workshops and conversations, and even in committees. If you could just tell me more about what that looks like and how that platform is permeating into, the women's soccer team.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think that Middlebury, especially after the past summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we've had a whole national kind of re-engagement and and asking ourselves, like, how are we supporting the people that we have been oppressing, and or vice versa, like how are we not supporting them? And I think there's been some really critical conversations, and I think it's cool that the sports world has taken some lead on this, especially at Middlebury. Like, I know that there's a lot in store for the future in terms of like DEI committees. Like, I'm on the women's soccer team, like DEI committee, and we've done a lot of active work to, just like embrace diversity and really change and ask some critical questions of ourselves that we have not asked ourselves before. And I think in all of that, I think it's important for people in positions of power to be addressing this first and foremost, right? Like, I think that athletics holds a lot of social clout in the United States and in the world, especially in smaller communities like at Mid. I think athletics have they hold so much power in dictating culture at Mid. And so I think that it's also a very normative space. Like, I don't know what your experience with that has been, but I feel like athletics is tailored to create success in a very like one track way almost. Like, I don't think that athletics have been inherently built to accept difference. And so it's cool then to then have all of this effort put into talking about difference, talking about diversity, talking about the ways like that we can embrace all of our differences, and that all makes us stronger. Like, that's something that the soccer team has done a lot of thinking about. And I think that that's somewhat of a metaphor for the rest of our lives, that like embracing the ways in which we are all different helps us be better and stronger together. And I think that that's the power that the athletics department and athletes should be preaching, is the power of difference, not the power of uniformity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it with, I can relate very strongly to the normative kind of social clout that Middlebury Athletics definitely has on campus. The athlete culture is pretty big there. I think for a lot of people, I think for a lot of schools and a lot of, team organizations and professional sports teams, they ultimately have the paper that says they're approaching issues of diversity and equity and inclusion, right, and they're talking about it and have these statements, but it's another thing to follow that up. I will say it's a step in the right direction. I think all things start like this. But when you talk about this idea of just the education and the space available to even talk about it's important. And then the second part of that is following up on it, which is talking as a team, embracing your differences and seeing how those differences can come together and make us stronger and better. That's the key there. And that's what I always felt I was lacking, especially in my professional sports careers. First of all, even coming out, I didn't know if that would potentially make me lose my career. And then second, if I were, I didn't know if the people around me were ready to embrace that difference I had as something that wouldn't make me feel not included or make me feel guilty or shamed. So, there is a lot that has to continue to get, move forward in order for this to be the new normative. But I think it does start on college campuses. Like I said, college campuses are where you'll see it again. Like, there's so much growth and development happening during those years. And I'm very proud and happy to see across NCAA them starting to do the right thing, and more so than what I've seen in other parts of the sports world. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. Like, I do feel a big difference. I think coming from Seattle and entering the space at Mid was a little bit of a shocking experience for me. Like, I know for a lot of people, it's like the most liberal space they've stepped into, or was like it opened up a whole new world, which is amazing. And for me, when I first came to Mid, and as I was like figuring out my own sexuality and stuff, like a big part of what felt like what appeased my anxiety about my sexuality was that, like, at least I was bi, so at least I was like half normal, right, and I could play into that world and kind of forget about the other part, and that I still felt like I belonged. And as I'm starting to come into my own and like know myself a little bit better and like learn these lessons about like self-acceptance. Like if I'm not going to love who I am, that's not anybody else's job. And
Right.
no one else might, like
Yeah.
just in terms of like difference and the strength that like normative culture has. Like it is an impressive force. But I feel so like lucky to now, like I can walk around campus holding hands with my girlfriend, like that's a big part of who I am and my identity at Mid. I'm an athlete. I am strong. I am smart. I'm all these things. And I'm also gay, and like, that's just a part of who I am. And I've come a long way, not afraid of that for myself, but afraid of what other people would think of me, or like if that was supposed to change who I was, or like if that would change the way people like thought about me. And I think that's so like frustrating and sad that like self-acceptance has so much to do with what other people think about it or might think about it. And the reality is, like you brought this up before, like the reality is people don't care or like depending on the spaces you're in, but like specifically at Mid, like people, like that's part of the culture and we've worked hard for that. And all of my friends have been super supportive. And I like have learned a lot of these hard lessons myself, like embracing myself, embracing my body, embracing the things I still don't know. Also like forgiving my past self for like things that I have done to try and fit in. And like all of those are lessons of acceptance and of embracing difference that I had to learn because of my sexuality, because I was abnormal,
Yeah.
But I think that those are lessons that we should all be learning, regardless of what your sexuality is, regardless of whether you fit into the norm or not. Like no one really fits into the norm. There is no such thing as, normal. And so I think that that's like letting go of all of those things that you're supposed to be has really helped me meander my way through who I am.
And that's wonderful. I mean, I came out more publicly not super long ago. And I think what I've realized is that, it's always evolving the way that you identify and what you learn about yourself. And, even within the gay community, the LGBTQ community, you find yourself every day questioning, wait a sec, where exactly do I fit in? Am I gay enough? Am I not gay enough? All these weird questions that come into my brain. But as I'm unpacking it, I'm realizing there's a lot built into essentially what the world was telling me since every single day I was born of what I should look like, and especially in the spaces that I was excelling in. At a young age, I was playing every single sport under the sun, and sports were my life, and they've been my life, and I'm getting back into a career in the sports industry. So everything that was around me was always driven by these somewhat, these rules of masculinity and this idea of this is what it looks like to be successful in this space at this time. And I think, ultimately the hardest thing that anyone has to do in life is to sit and just be completely comfortable with who they are and not care what the world thinks. I'm still going through that every day, and it will probably continue the rest of my life, but I'm just trying to have more days where that I am comfortable with who I am than when I'm not. And again, this is this perpetuation of stereotypes that has somewhat plagued us, and that we're going to work through. And the way we do that is by having, strong individuals who are starting to understand who they are and be comfortable themselves, speak up and try to change the narrative.
That's why I think that things like this are so important. And I am proud to be part of the Middlebury athletic community who is striving for change. Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who just need an on-ramp to that new like world that we're all going for. Like we all want that change. Like we are all better when everyone feels safe and included.
Okay, well, thank you for joining in on this conversation, and thank you, Elise, for getting to know me this past few weeks. And I look forward to continuing talking to Middlebury students and the athletic program. I'm very happy about what's going on here. And thanks for all others who joined in on this episode of Leading into Discomfort.